Good evening. Let's begin tonight by situating ourselves very precisely in time, and in place, and in intention. It is January in Washington, and the Justice Department is preparing for something that, on paper, has been underway for nearly a year already. Attorney General Pam Bondi took office last year, and almost immediately, she created something called the Weaponization Working Group. That name is not incidental. It is not a placeholder. It is the point. The group was designed to review law enforcement actions taken during the Biden administration, looking specifically for what Bondi described as politicized justice. That phrase, politicized justice, appears again and again in how this effort has been described, both publicly and internally. The focus from the outset was clear. Investigations into President Donald Trump. Investigations conducted by former special counsel Jack Smith and his staff. Investigations conducted by Manhattan District Attorney Alvin Bragg. Investigations conducted by New York Attorney General Letitia James. And investigations related to the January 6, 2021 attack on the U.S. Capitol, specifically any that could be characterized as improper. All of that was laid out early. It was formalized in a memo. It was announced as a priority. And then, for a full year, publicly, nothing happened. No reports. No findings. No announced conclusions. And that absence is important because now that silence is ending. Justice Department officials are expected to meet Monday to discuss how to re-energize these probes. That is not speculation. That is according to a source familiar with the plan. The goal, as described, is to deliver results. Results that have been demanded. Results that are now overdue. In recent weeks, President Trump has been pressing Justice Department officials, urging them to move faster, urging them to deliver. He recently admonished a group of U.S. attorneys for failing to bring cases he once brought. That pressure is now translating into structure. The Weaponization Working Group is expected to begin meeting daily, with the explicit goal of producing results within the next 2 months. That is a timeline. That is urgency. That is a shift. And it matters because of what this group was created to do, and because of what it has not yet done. Pam Bondi has been consistent in her public messaging. She has repeatedly criticized the Biden administration for what she alleges was political weaponization of law enforcement. At the same time, during her tenure, federal prosecutors have brought investigations and indictments against Trump's political adversaries. Those two things have unfolded in parallel. Bondi has framed this as a correction, a reset. In October, speaking to lawmakers, she put it this way: I took office with 2 main goals: to end the weaponization of justice and return the department to its core mission of fighting violent crime. That line is short, it is simple, and it is doing a lot of work, because embedded in it is an assertion that weaponization was occurring, and that it must be undone. The Justice Department, for its part, has been careful in how it discusses this effort. On Sunday, a spokesperson declined to provide specifics about the upcoming meetings, citing the department's policy of not discussing ongoing investigations. But the spokesperson did acknowledge that the efforts continue. The Justice Department is actively looking into the areas outlined in Attorney General Bondi's Day 1 memo, the spokesperson said. The Weaponization Working Group is diligently working to restore integrity to the Department of Justice and is utilizing resources across the entire agency to fulfill this effort. Restore integrity. Those words are chosen deliberately. They imply something was lost, and they imply that what comes next is corrective. But here is where the timeline becomes unavoidable. Bondi established the group last February. That was after President Trump issued an executive order titled Ending the Weaponization of the Federal Government. The memo Bondi signed on her first day went to every department employee. It outlined the purpose of the group. It directed a review of the activities of all departments and agencies exercising civil or criminal enforcement authority over the last 4 years. 4 years. It instructed the group to look for practices designed to achieve political objectives or other improper aims. 7 areas were identified for examination. In addition to the Trump-related cases, the group was tasked with reviewing allegations raised by Republicans during the Biden administration. Those included allegations of discrimination against Catholics, a Biden-era memo about protecting school board members against threats from parents, protections for whistleblowers, prosecutions against anti-abortion demonstrators. This was not a narrow mandate. It was expansive, and it was specific. At one point, the group was led by Ed Martin. He was tapped for the role after the Senate failed to confirm him as U.S. Attorney for Washington, D.C. That leadership structure matters because it signals how seriously this effort was taken and by whom. And yet, despite all of that structure, all of that authority, all of that stated urgency, the group produced nothing publicly for a year. No findings, no announcements, no conclusions. And now, suddenly, there is a 2-month clock. There is daily meetings, there is presidential pressure, and there is an expectation that something concrete will emerge. One source familiar with the plan describes the goal plainly: produce results. That phrase, produce results, carries weight here, because it suggests that what happens next is not exploratory, it is not theoretical, it is outcome-driven, and it raises questions that the Justice Department is not answering publicly. What constitutes a result? Who decides when the goal has been met, and what happens once it is? For now, we know this much. The effort is accelerating, the timeline is tightening, and the group that once worked quietly in the background is being brought forward, with expectations attached. There is a moment in situations like this where the process itself becomes the headline, where the act of moving faster becomes the signal, and where the absence of prior action makes the sudden urgency impossible to ignore. As one Justice Department official once put it, in a different context, the calendar has a way of focusing the mind. And right now, the calendar is very much in play. When you look closely at the Weaponization Working Group, what stands out first is how deliberately it was constructed. This was not an informal task force. It was not a short-term review. It was designed from the beginning to be broad, methodical, and anchored in written directives. Attorney General Pam Bondi established the group last February, not quietly, but as a direct response to an executive order issued by President Trump. That executive order carried a title that left little room for interpretation: Ending the Weaponization of the Federal Government. Titles matter in Washington. They frame intent. They shape expectation. And in this case, the title set the tone for everything that followed. On her first day in office, Bondi signed a memo that went out to Justice Department employees. That memo did several things at once. It formally created the Weaponization Working Group. It defined its purpose, and it gave it an unusually wide scope. The group was instructed to review the activities of all departments and agencies exercising civil or criminal enforcement authority over the last 4 years. All departments, all agencies. 4 years. The memo directed the group to look for practices that were designed to achieve political objectives or other improper aims. That language is precise. It does not describe policy disagreements, it describes motive. And that distinction matters, because reviewing motive is far more complex than reviewing outcomes. The memo then laid out 7 areas for examination. Some of those areas were already well known: the investigations into President Trump, the work of former special counsel Jack Smith and his staff, the cases brought by Manhattan District Attorney Alvin Bragg, the actions taken by New York Attorney General Letitia James, and investigations related to the January 6th attack on the U.S. Capitol. But the mandate did not stop there. The group was also tasked with reviewing issues that Republicans had raised repeatedly during the Biden administration: allegations of discrimination against Catholics, a memo issued during the Biden years about protecting school board members against threats from parents, the handling of whistleblower protections, prosecutions of anti-abortion demonstrators. These were not randomly selected topics. They were issues that had already been politically charged. They had already been debated publicly, and now they were being pulled into a formal Justice Department review structure. At one point, the group was led by Ed Martin. His appointment is part of this picture. Martin had been nominated to serve as U.S. Attorney for Washington, D.C. The Senate did not confirm him. After that, he was tapped to lead the Weaponization Working Group. That sequence is notable. It shows how personnel decisions intersected with the priorities of this effort. It also underscores that this group was not peripheral. It was staffed and led by figures with significant visibility. And yet, for a year, the group produced nothing publicly. That absence has been consistent. There have been no reports released, No findings announced. No summaries made available. No conclusions shared. That does not necessarily mean the group was inactive, but it does mean that, externally, there was nothing to point to. No deliverables, no milestones, no outcomes. And that is where the current moment becomes more significant, because now the emphasis has shifted. Justice Department officials are expected to meet to discuss how to re-energize the probes. Re-energize is the word being used. It suggests something that existed, but slowed. Something that needs renewed momentum. And that momentum is coming with a deadline. The group is expected to begin meeting daily. Daily meetings are not about exploration. They are about production. They are about movement. They are about narrowing focus. The stated goal is to produce results within the next 2 months. That timeline is short, especially given the scope of the review, especially given the complexity of the issues involved, and especially given the fact that the group has already existed for a year without public output. The pressure behind this acceleration is not subtle. President Trump has been pressing Justice Department officials directly. He has admonished U.S. attorneys for failing to bring cases he wants brought. That pressure is now being reflected in the internal cadence of the department, and that creates a different environment, an environment where the question is no longer whether to act, but how quickly. Pam Bondi's public statements provide important context here. Throughout her tenure, she has criticized what she describes as political weaponization under the Biden administration. At the same time, federal prosecutors under her leadership have brought investigations and indictments against Trump's political adversaries. Those actions are described as separate from the Weaponization Working Group's efforts. That distinction is emphasized repeatedly. The group's work is described as unrelated to individual prosecutions, but the timing and overlap are impossible to ignore. In addition to now dismissed indictments against former FBI Director James Comey and New York Attorney General Letitia James, federal prosecutors have brought an indictment against Trump's former National Security Advisor, John Bolton. They have opened criminal investigations into Federal Reserve Chair Jerome Powell, into Federal Reserve Governor Lisa Cook, into former CIA Director John Brennan, and others. Those actions are proceeding through traditional prosecutorial channels. The Weaponization Working Group, by contrast, is a review mechanism. It is not itself bringing charges. It is examining past actions. That distinction matters legally. But politically, the lines can blur. And the department has been careful to keep its public language restrained. When asked about the upcoming meetings, the Justice Department spokesperson declined to provide specifics. The spokesperson emphasized that the department does not discuss ongoing investigations. That is standard. But the acknowledgement that the group's efforts continue is also telling. It signals continuity. And now, acceleration. The spokesperson pointed back to Bondi's Day 1 memo, to the areas outlined there, to the stated goal of restoring integrity. Restore integrity. It is a phrase that carries both weight and ambiguity. It does not specify what integrity looks like in practice. It does not specify what happens if integrity is found to have been compromised. It leaves room. And in Washington, room is often where the most consequential decisions are made. There is a quote that has been circulating quietly among department staff, attributed to a senior official, and it captures the mood succinctly. This is no longer about review, the official said. This is about delivery. It is a short line. It does not assign blame. It does not predict outcomes. But it signals a shift. A shift from examination to expectation, from process to product. And that shift raises practical questions. How does a group tasked with reviewing 4 years of activity across multiple agencies produce results in 2 months? What defines a result in this context? Is it a report? Is it a referral? Is it a recommendation? Those questions are not being answered publicly, and perhaps intentionally so, because the structure of the group allows for flexibility. It can produce internal findings. It can recommend changes. It can flag issues for further action. The memo does not constrain the form of the output, and that flexibility cuts both ways. It allows for responsiveness, but it also allows for interpretation, and interpretation, in a politically charged environment, becomes consequential. For now, what we can say with certainty is this. The Weaponization Working Group was created with a broad mandate. It operated quietly for a year. It is now being pushed to act quickly, and the pressure to produce is coming from the highest levels. As one longtime Justice Department observer put it, quietly, process buys you time, deadlines take it away. And the time now is being taken away. The Justice Department is not unveiling a new initiative, it is intensifying an existing one. The Weaponization Working Group has been in place since last February. Its mandate has not changed. What has changed is the pace. Justice Department officials are expected to meet, beginning Monday, to discuss how to re-energize the group's work. That word again, re-energize. It suggests movement after stillness. It suggests urgency layered onto a process that had been moving quietly, without public markers. The goal, according to a source familiar with the plan, is to produce results within the next 2 months. That timeline is now the central fact around which everything else turns. 2 months, daily meetings, a directive to deliver. President Trump's pressure on Justice Department officials has been direct. He has admonished U.S. attorneys for failing to bring cases he wants brought. That pressure is not abstract. It is being felt inside the department, and it is shaping how this group is now expected to function. Attorney General Pam Bondi has been consistent in how she frames this effort. From her first day in office, she has described the Weaponization Working Group as a mechanism to review what she characterizes as politicized justice during the Biden administration. Her Day 1 memo outlined the scope. 4 years. All departments and agencies exercising civil or criminal enforcement authority. Practices designed to achieve political objectives or other improper aims. 7 areas identified for examination. Those parameters remain in place. They have not been narrowed. They have not been expanded. What has changed is the expectation that something tangible will now emerge from them. The Justice Department spokesperson's statement on Sunday is careful and revealing in its restraint. The department does not discuss ongoing investigations. That line is standard. But the acknowledgement that the Weaponization Working Group is actively looking into the areas outlined in Bondi's memo is not new. What is new is the emphasis on diligence, on utilizing resources across the entire agency, on restoring integrity. That language frames the work as corrective. It implies a mission with an endpoint, but it does not define what that endpoint looks like. And that ambiguity is part of the structure. The group's efforts are described as unrelated to individual prosecutions. That distinction is repeated. It is important, because alongside the group's review work, federal prosecutors under Bondi have brought investigations and indictments against Trump's political adversaries. Some of those indictments have been dismissed. Others are ongoing. An indictment has been brought against Trump's former National Security Advisor, John Bolton. Criminal investigations have been opened into Federal Reserve Chair Jerome Powell, into Federal Reserve Governor Lisa Cook, into former CIA Director John Brennan, and others. Those actions are proceeding through standard prosecutorial channels. They are not products of the Weaponization Working Group. That separation is emphasized by the department. But in the public mind, these developments exist in the same frame. They are happening at the same time, under the same leadership, with the same stated goal of addressing what Bondi describes as prior politicization. And that convergence matters. The group itself has a defined history. It was created after President Trump issued an executive order titled Ending the Weaponization of the Federal Government. That order set the tone. Bondi's memo operationalized it. The group was at one point led by Ed Martin, a figure whose own confirmation as U.S. Attorney for Washington, D.C. failed in the Senate. That leadership choice reflected the seriousness with which the department approached the group. It also reflected the political environment in which it was operating. For a year, the group worked without public output. That fact is uncontested. Now, with daily meetings planned, the expectation is different. The phrase being used internally is produce results, not continue review, not expand inquiry. Produce results. That phrasing carries implications. It suggests that the review phase is ending, or at least that it is being compressed. It suggests that the group is expected to identify conclusions, findings, or recommendations that can be described as outcomes. What form those outcomes will take is not specified. The memo does not require a public report. It does not mandate referrals. It does not outline enforcement actions. It leaves the form of the output open. That openness allows flexibility. It also allows discretion. And discretion, exercised under time pressure, is a powerful thing. Pam Bondi's October testimony before lawmakers provides a clear window into how she views her role. "I took office with two main goals," she said: to end the weaponization of justice and return the department to its core mission of fighting violent crime. That sentence does not mention the working group by name, but it defines the lens through which its work is viewed. Ending weaponization, returning to a core mission. Those are directional statements. They do not specify process. They specify purpose. The Justice Department's public posture remains measured. There are no previews of findings, no hints at conclusions, no signals about next steps beyond the meetings themselves. But the compression of the timeline is itself a signal. It tells us that the department is entering a different phase, a phase where internal review is expected to translate into something visible, something countable, something that can be described as a result. And in Washington, results are often judged not only by substance but by timing. 2 months is not a long time, not for a review spanning 4 years of activity across multiple agencies, not for issues that have already been the subject of intense public debate. That tension between scope and schedule is now at the center of this effort. There is a line, attributed to a Justice Department veteran, that captures the moment without adding anything to it. "When the meetings go daily," the person said, "it means the waiting is over." It is a simple observation. It does not predict what will come out of the process. It does not assign value, but it recognizes a shift, and that shift is what defines where we are now. The Weaponization Working Group is no longer operating in the background. It is being brought forward. Its work is being accelerated. Its output is being anticipated, and its timeline is being watched. What happens within those daily meetings will shape what, if anything, is produced at the end of the 2-month window. The Justice Department has not said what will be made public. It has not said when. It has not said how. But it has acknowledged the effort, and it has acknowledged the mandate, and now it has acknowledged the urgency. As this unfolds, the facts remain fixed. The group exists. Its scope is defined. Its leadership has been named. Its mandate is documented. Its timeline is tightened. Everything else will follow from that. And when the department speaks next about this work, it will not be about intention. It will be about outcome.